geometry people, welcome to your 22.1 video notes. This is all about circle equations. So today we want to be able to find the equation of a circle and then also use circle equations to describe a circle. Okay, so we talked last week all about different segments of circles and angles in circles, different special features of circles basically. This week we're kind of getting more into the algebra of it. How would I actually graph a circle? What equation would I use to do that? That kind of thing. So we have this thing called a standard form for a circle equation. So our standard form is this equation right here. It's x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. And these different numbers in here, letters h, k, and r, will be represented by numbers that have to do with your circle. So the center of your circle is at the coordinates h, k. So h is the x-coordinate of your center, k is the y-coordinate of your center, and then r is the radius of your circle. So if you have a center at a certain point, and then a radius that you know, you can make the equation for your circle. So for example, if we had a center at 2, 4 and a radius of 4, we could write an equation for our circle. So we would just plug these numbers in. 2 would represent h, 4 would be k, and the other 4 here would be r for the radius. So we would have for our equation x minus 2 squared plus y minus 4 squared equals 4 squared. And since 4 squared is an actual number, we can replace that with the number that it would actually be. So we'd want to replace that with 16. So 4 squared, since 4 squared is 16, would become that. And we can leave this as x minus 2 squared plus y minus 4 squared. And this would be our standard form for an equation of a circle with the center at 2, 4 and the radius of 4. So that's one thing we can do if we're given a center and a radius. We can write an equation for our circle. Another thing we could do is we can kind of go backwards from that. We can find the center and the radius of a circle if we know the circle's equation. So let's zoom in a little bit here. So our equation for this circle is x minus 4 squared plus y plus 1 squared equals 25. Alright, so for this one, my center, hk, remember, so this would be my x value. This would be my y value. But if you notice up here with our, with our standard form, there's a minus for both of those. So we have a minus here, we have a minus here, we're subtracting. And in here, we're adding. So another way I could write this is y minus negative 1, right? Because minus a negative is like adding a positive. So my y-coordinate for the center is actually going to be negative 1. So anytime it's plus in the middle instead, it's negative for that coordinate. So negative 1 is going to be our y-coordinate, and positive 4 will be our x-coordinate. Then to find the radius, well, I know that this number is equal to r squared, right? So 25 is r squared. So if I want to know what r is, well, then I just take the square root, right? Because square root both sides, that undoes my square. So r is just 5. So my radius of this circle is 5. So all you have to do is you take the number here and the number here. That becomes the coordinates of your center. You take the square root of the number here, and that becomes your radius. So if I want to know the center and the radius, x-coordinate, y-coordinate, square root for the radius. So that's another thing we can do. We can kind of go back and forth between equations and information about the circle. Another thing we can do, we can take this a step further and actually look at the graph. So now we're going to jump over here to example 3. write the equation of the circle pictured. So kind of like in example 2, we were given, example 1, we were given a center and a radius. So this is just taking it a step back a little bit. If we look at the circle, we can find the center and the radius, because the center of this circle is at over -2, up 2. So that's my center. And then my radius, I can just count out from the center, right? 1, 2, 3. My radius is 3. And now we're back to the same scenario we had in example 1, where we were writing the equation of a circle if we were given the center and the radius. So now, this is my h, this is my k. So we have x minus h, so minus -2, plus y minus k, so -2, equals your radius squared, so 3 squared. We have to do a little bit of simplifying here. X minus -2 is really going to be like x plus 2. Y minus 2 can stay the same. 3 squared, 3 times 3 is 9. So there is our equation of our circle in its simplest form here. Standard form. Okay. So that's another thing that we can do. If we're given a circle, we can find the center and the radius and use that to make our equation. All right. Last one, example 4. Graph the circle with the equation x minus 3 squared plus y plus 2 squared equals 4. So this is a lot like example 2, where we're given the equation. We need to pull the center and the radius from that and use that to make a graph. So here's our h, here's our k, here's r squared. So we can use that to find our center. H is 3. K, now remember, if it's plus something, we're going to do the negative of that, so -2. That's our x and y coordinates for our center. And then if r squared equals 4, and I square root both sides, that tells me that r is 2. So my radius is going to be 2. So now we can go over to our graph. And I know my center is at 3, 2. So I'm going to go over 3 up, 3, -2. So over 3 down 2. There's the center of my circle. And my radius is 2. So what I'm going to do here, so I make sure I draw my circle okay, is that from my center, I'm going to go up 2, right 2, down 2, and left 2. Because that ensures that my radius is 2 all the way around. Then I'm just going to draw my circle. And there we go. That's the circle that's described by the equation x minus 3 squared plus y plus 2 squared equals 4. You can also use a graphing calculator, something like Desmos or a TI calculator that has graphing, and you can make the graph on there as well, but I think this is just as easy. Okay, so hopefully this was helpful to use your video notes. Your homework is going to be the next page, this practice sheet. If there's not enough room for you to do your work or show your work, feel free to use a piece of scratch paper that you stick in there. Also, for problems 17 through 20, it asks you to make a graph. So here's 4 graphs you can use as space to graph your circle equations. Okay, so get started. I'll see you guys tomorrow.